host.
Okay.
So I think we are on. Here we go. So welcome, John. For everyone who doesn't know, this is John Dove. I'm saying that right, John Dove?
Yes, correct.
He's a fellow former Crown Prosecutor at the CPS. He is now I'm getting this right, you are a self-employed barrister at Charterhouse Chambers.
That's right, yes.
Also the winner of the Diversity and Inclusion Award from LexisNexis.
Yeah.
And many of you will probably recognize John as the face and the founder of Speed Mooting. We were saying just before we came on that we're living very similar lives and know each other from afar. So it's been really nice to finally kind of sit with you and have the conversation.
This video is sponsored by Lexstery, the first free online community for aspiring lawyers pursuing a legal career in England and Wales. Inside the community, you will gain access to our courses, legal career consulting programs, forum, free resources, and live events, which we run every month, covering a range of topics, including legal applications, legal interviews, advocacy events, and we host guest speakers from across the legal profession who share their tips and tricks on how to secure a training contract and pupillage. You can sign up for free at lexstery.com, and we look forward to welcoming you inside our legal community.
Yeah, likewise. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you, Taz. And it's crazy it's taken so long for us to finally meet this way, because as you say, you know, we're so similar. We're doing similar things to help the next generation. So it's great that we're finally crossing paths in this way.
And I will just say as well, from the outset, that really touched by your gesture when you were doing the Northern Pupillage Fair. And that's another thing. He's a man of many strings on his bow, but really kind of you at the time when you were doing it, that you offered us at Lexstery a stall there, you know, and although I didn't come, because I didn't feel like we were in a position to come. I just wanted to say from the outset, like, I was really touched by that gesture. I thought it was really kind of you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. You know, because, you know, as I say, you're doing so much to help the next generation. So anything, you know, that we can do to help you, we're always happy to do so. And yeah, it means a lot. I
wanna take you back from the start. And I'm guessing from the accent, you're a northern chap, like myself. Liverpool. So next door-ish. So, yeah, neighbours from Great Manchester. So I just kind of want to touch on it. You know, I was thinking, as we were saying before we came on, like what the conversation was going to be today. And normally I do preparation to questions I want to ask, but with the breadth of things we have to discuss, I just thought, what a pointless exercise. We might as well just kind of see where the conversation goes. But I will take us back, if it's all right with you, to like, you can just take me to the beginning, because as I've said at the beginning, you were a former prosecutor. You've gone on to become a defense criminal barrister in Chambers.
Yes. How
did the path to the bar for you begin? And being from the north, because you've set up the Northern Pupillage Fair now, and it's when I saw it being released for the first time, I thought, what a great idea, because it's kind of been bubbling under the surface for a very long time from people in the north wanting to pursue a career at the bar, for something like that to exist. So I'd be interested to know kind of your journey to the bar, how you ended up where you were, and how you ended up where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, it's quite a long story. And the reason it's a long story, and the reason I tell it this way, is hopefully to inspire people and to get the message across that, you know, getting to the bar is a marathon, not a sprint. So my background, went to, you know, state school, came out at 18 and, you know, had the idea I wanted to be a barrister. So I went to the University of Liverpool and did my law degree at the age of 18. Didn't really know much about the bar, didn't have any connections. I was the first one to go to university. So I went through, did my degree, came out with a 2-1 from a good university. So I was happy with that. Went to Manchester Met to do the bar course. That was the only place in the Northwest you could do the bar course way back when. This is 2011, 2012. And like with most people, didn't get a pupillage offer first time round. So I finished the bar course and had to go in and start working as a paralegal. I had the bar course to pay for, so I needed a job right away. So I ended up working as a paralegal in a few different firms that dealt with personal injury, because back then there was a lot of work in personal injury. simply because of the way that the market was. The market's changed slightly now, so I don't think there's as many opportunities, but it was a thriving industry back then, if I put it that way. So as soon as I started in work, I was building up the skills to become a barrister. So when I was paralegaling, I did a lot of drafting, pleadings, applications, etc. I did a little bit of advocacy in court. And so I'm building up the skills that you need to be a barrister. And I started getting interviews. I was getting to final round interviews, and I thought,
where was this at this point? Because you start in 2011, you said. Like,
yeah.
What year are you in at this point where you're now?
So we're probably getting to around 2014 now. So I've been working as a paralegal for about 2 years. So I've gone through 2 pupillage cycles post bar course.
Yeah.
So the first pupillage cycle is probably when I start getting the odd interview here and there. The second year is when I start doing well and start getting to sort of final round interviews.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, you've got 5 years post bar course to get a pupillage.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm doing well in the second cycle, so I'll probably get one at some point, but I might not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's always that risk that I could be one of those that gets to the 5th year and doesn't get one. So I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to hedge my bets. And because I'd done the bar course, I was exempt from 50% of the LPC. Right. So that meant I could do an LPC part-time in 1 year. And I could, could do the full amount effectively. So I was exempt from a number of the advocacy courses, a number of the litigation. Basically, it meant I could do it on a Saturday and still work full-time and have the whole thing done in a year. And I thought I can apply for both training contracts and pupillages, whichever.
You're running 2 horses at this point.
Exactly.
That must have been a lot of energy as well.
It was crazy because, obviously I was working full time. Then you've got the LPC, which is, it's no mean feat. And then on top of that, I was still running Speed Mooting. It was just competitions back then, but even still, I was still running that. So I got to the end of the LPC, graduated that. And I applied for a training contract with a criminal defence firm in Widnes, which is just outside of Liverpool. Wasn't working for them at the time. This was an open application, and I was lucky enough to land the training contract.
Right. Okay.
So I became a trainee solicitor in criminal defence.
Okay.
And given how interested I was in advocacy, instead of doing the professional, well, you do the professional course, but instead of picking optional modules, I decided to do the higher rights instead in crime. Right. So when I qualified as an HCA, higher rights advocate.
Got you. Okay.
So that meant I was a solicitor advocate. So did that for a couple of years, about 3 or 4 years, I think, and then moved to the CPS during COVID.
So that would have been around what, 2017, 2018?
2017 is when I qualified, and 2020 is when I moved to the CPS.
Right. And how was that transition going from a firm into CPS?
Very strange, actually. Strange for a number of reasons. So firstly, I've been defending for many years, so you're having to switch your brain from defense mode to prosecution mode.
Can you ever fully switch?
Well, yeah, that's the question. I think I did, I think I did. And I think we're going a bit off piece there, but I think it's something good to note. I think those who have done both sides of the fence are more well-rounded lawyers. So, for example, particularly, you'll know this as a prosecutor, when it comes to disclosure, you'll be thinking, well, if I was defending in this case, what would I be thinking about? What would I want to know? So you have a much more well-rounded approach. Yeah. And particularly when you're charging cases from the outset, you're thinking, okay, which different lines of attack will the defense come from? So you're thinking about the case from all different angles. And it means that you build a better case, but also you're being I suppose a lot more well-rounded, a lot more reasonable in your decision making.
It helps with the questioning, because it's when you're thinking of what the questions to put, as a defense advocate, it really gives you insights that you can't just have if you've just prosecuted. You can have insights, but not. I don't think you can't have the full spectrum if you've not defended.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it works both ways, because, now I'm back doing mainly defense work. I'm thinking about, I've got my prosecutor hat on as well when I'm prepping cases. So, it makes you think about the case from all angles.
So you go from the defense firm to CPS. It's around 2017, 2018 at that point. You started out, I'd assume, as a Crown Prosecutor.
I went, sorry. So it was 2017 that sorry, just to backtrack. So 2017, I got my training contract.
Yeah.
I only had to do an 18-month training contract because of my previous paralegal experience. So I got 6 months knocked off. So I qualified September 2017 as a solicitor in defence and stayed there until June 2020, which is when I jumped ship to the CPS.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I went straight in as a senior Crown Prosecutor.
Yeah. Makes sense, actually, with your level of experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are listening, the difference in a Crown Prosecutor and a senior Crown Prosecutor is the Crown Prosecutor generally prosecutes cases in the magistrates' court, but they don't have the authority to make decisions to either charge cases or withdraw charges. A senior Crown Prosecutor has that power, and that's the key difference, really, isn't it, Taz?
Yeah, I think because mine was a unique year because mine was the first year they rolled out the Crown Advocate Level 1 role.
Oh.
So I never qualified as a Crown Prosecutor. I went into this kind of new role. So I don't know by virtue of that new role whether I could withdraw or not withdraw charges. I did withdraw charges, but the things which I was capped on withdrawing were sexual things of a sexual nature. They had to go up the chain. So I think, yeah, my understanding predominantly difference between Crown Prosecutor and seniors was that they're a lot more involved in charging in the paper side of the role, and they're not just in court 5 days a week. It's normally three-ish days and then 2 days. I don't know if it's changed since when did you leave the CPS?
So I left the CPS in October 2023. Yeah. So, but I mean, in terms of what you're talking about there, the Crown Advocate Level 1, I'd say I don't know much about that. That might be something that came in after I left the CPS.
Yeah, I think we were the first year. Basically, the difference, what it was meant to be, that we ran Crown Court cases 50% of the week, and then the other 50% was magistrates. So you jumping the two.
Yeah, I can see the benefit of that scheme, actually. So yeah, I can certainly see the benefit there.
So you went from doing so you went straight into a senior Crown Prosecutor role. What in terms of when you arrived in that role, bear in mind you had a decent amount of defense experience at that point, even when you were paralegaling.
Yes.
What did you think of the intensity of the role?
So when I went into the role, because we were in the height of COVID, I was effectively working from home, just doing charging decisions. The way it works in Mersey, Cheshire, which is where I was based, is senior Crown Prosecutors don't really go to court.
Right.
So it was a real shift for me, because when I was in defence, I was in court pretty much every single day of the week. And then you go to this new role where you're at home, working at home anyway, because we were in the height of COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing file reviews, charging advices in a brand new firm where you've not been before. So I literally got a laptop in the post, got a phone call the week before saying, "There's your laptop, John, switch it on Monday and get cracking."
Well, it sounds like then a nice slower pace then to some extent.
It really was.
Yeah.
It's such a slow pace. And I think the real difference was the fact that you don't really have clients when you're prosecuting. Obviously, you've got witnesses, but I didn't really meet with them because I wasn't going to court. So it just meant that you're getting on with the role, just doing the work. You haven't got that interaction with clients. So I think it was a bit of a slower pace of life, actually, if you think about it from that point of view. But it was just very different, having to get to grips to, a new case management system, a new way of operating, all the standard operating procedures. And then just the fact that, as I say, it's a complete mindset shift going from defence to the CPS.
See, my experience, and I'm conscious we're veering off here and there, but I feel like we have to as we go, because my experience was radically different from yours.
Really?
Mine was 100 miles an hour. Soon as I cut past first six and I was on my feet, it was 120 miles an hour in court 5 days a week, running a lot of magistrates court cases, spinning my Crown Court work as well, and just kind of running the two horses essentially. So yeah, it was from the moment you could get into court, it was very fast paced. I've to be honest, to date, I've not had a job like that level of pace.
Yeah.
And you get used to it. But I think it's there. No matter how quick and good you get at prepping cases, as you know, prepping cases requires X amount of time.
Yeah.
No matter how fast you are, when you've got 50 to 100 pages to read, or 200-300 pages to read, there are some corners you can't cut. You know what I mean? It's some things that have to be read, have to be absorbed for you to be able to go in there and be effective.
And it's difficult, isn't it? So during the 3-4 years I was at the CPS, I did probably about 15 or 20 days in court, in the magistrates court, just simply because I was really interested in advocacy. So even though SCPs don't go to court in that area, I would always say to my line manager, if there's a chance, just send me to court. I want to go. So I did maybe 15 or 20 days in court.
Right.
And as you say, let's say it's a day where you're doing a list, and you could have 15 or 20 cases. And, and that's not uncommon at all. And, as you say, you're prepping for that the night before. Even if you spend 3 hours prepping on 20 cases, sometimes you spend more, but let's just say three hours. What does that equate to? It's probably 15-20 minutes per case, if that.
It's crazy when you break down the numbers like that. Yeah. And that 15-20 minutes, that's an ability. Once you start knowing where to look, and you know exactly what you're looking for, then you can churn through them like that. Yeah. And then in the beginning, when you just trying to learn the systems and the SOPs and the this and the that, it's never 10-15 minutes, especially when it's a stinker with 20 charges, and potentially the judge in that court might want song and verse over every single charge. Then it just takes what it takes, isn't it?
And then you've got to remember, am I applying for a restraining order? Am I applying for compensation? And you need to remember that you go through absolutely everything when you prosecute the case in court. So it's
spinning plates. I think that's the job. It's spinning a lot of different plates. What was so you said 2 to 3 years you were at the CPS. So when did you leave?
So I left in October 2023. So I was still a solicitor at this point when I worked for the CPS. So I was it would have been just over 3 years in, and I made the decision that initially I wanted to be a barrister. That's why I went to law school. I thought, you know what, let's finally follow this through. There were very limited opportunities for Crown advocate positions at the CPS. Things might have changed now, but certainly when I was there, the opportunities were very limited. So I saw the only real opportunity for me to develop a decent practice as a barrister was to move and go into chambers.
Yeah.
So I applied to the Bar Standards Board for an exemption from pupillage. And thankfully, because of my experience, I was given a full exemption, meaning I didn't need to complete any form of pupillage, not even at 3 months. I got a full exemption. And I applied to Charterhouse Chambers, and they were happy to take me on as a tenant.
Where are Charterhouse Chambers for those who listen?
So they're based in Liverpool on Chapel Street in the city centre.
Right. And what type of what areas of, is it just a fully criminal set?
No. So we're a mixed chamber. So we've got about 25 or 30 members, so probably a mid-sized chambers. We do a bit of everything. So crime, family, civil. It's mainly a family chambers. So I think there's only about 5 criminal barristers in our team, but we're very busy.
Yeah.
We are very busy. And that's something that surprised me going into chambers, because I thought making the leap from, employment, going into the bar, going into chambers, I thought, well, I'll probably be in court a handful of days every week whilst I build up a practice, build up a network.
Yeah.
From day one, my diary was jam-packed.
Wow. Okay. So you basically stuck in. And it's funny because when you tell me that you're jam-packed, because similar to you, I have my own things outside of my profession that I build. I know that energy is a very big thing, and managing energy, like to do what you've done, where you've built Speed Mooting up, and you're building these things up when you've got a very busy job as well. I feel like you just have to spin the plate so delicately to make sure nothing crashes and everything's being served.
That is probably the best way to describe it, spinning all the different plates delicately, because there is so much going on.
So how, like, if you compare, let's say, in what areas is, like, and it'd be a really good one for people listening to look, like, to listen to, in the sense that it's very rare that you meet someone who's kind of done each profession individually, but then kind of gone through the full criminal circuit as well, i.e. he's gone from employed to self-employed. If you were to compare the two out of interest, there's the age-old question, isn't there, in the CPS? Should I go to chambers? Should I stay? And you're one of the fortunate ones who's been on both sides. So if you've been at Charterhouse for a meaningful period of time now as well, haven't you? So like, if you were to put them in columns and compare them as best you could, how would you compare the two?
Okay, all right. So I'll caveat this by saying, I wasn't a Crown advocate at the CPS, so I wasn't one of these people that's in the Crown Court every single day of the week. I think that certainly moving to chambers and being at the self-employed bar is the busiest I've ever been in my professional career. So putting aside speed mooting and everything there, just in terms of, the legal work side of things, certainly the busiest I've been, but also the most rewarding as well, because, I thoroughly enjoy working for myself. And I think that would be the difficult thing now. I could never go back into an employed position. So yeah, I've certainly enjoyed it the most from that point of view. You're dealing with such a broad range of work as well, because, I do a lot of motoring cases. So, people who are charged with drink driving, speeding, etc. And then likewise, I'm dealing with some of the most serious offences, very serious assaults, large scale drugs cases, very serious sexual cases. So, you've got a really broad spectrum of the types of cases that you're dealing with there. So I think that being at the bar, being in chambers, I think that that's the busiest I've been, but also what I've enjoyed the most as well, just because of the variety of work. Also how regularly I'm in court, which is every single day.
And for those listening, is it fair to say that you have complete autonomy over your time? Like, what are the I'm careful to tread the line carefully, like with any employer. There's things actually we say and we don't say. However, with that said, what is the autonomy like within chambers? Are you the master of your calendar, or because naturally you're wanting to get more complex work, right? So you can grow as an advocate and develop your practice. So how does that work? Are you selecting the work? Are you doing the work that's presented to you, or are you trying to navigate in some way to kind of end up in an area or a specialism that you want to be in?
Yeah, so I don't think I'm aiming for any particular specialism within crime at the moment. So, things might change in the future, and I might say, particularly like X type of crime, let's focus on that. But at present, I'm not looking to aim towards a specific part of crime. My chambers are really good, actually. They're really accommodating, because obviously, I have speed mooting. So, obviously we have various events that we run. So they're very accommodating in that sense. They're actually, I suppose in terms of, autonomy over my own time, when I'm working, obviously you've got the cab rank rule there. So you're always subject to the cab rank rule. But what I've said to chambers is, I'm pretty amenable. I'm happy to work in any type of crime that they see fit. And also that I think that benefits me, because it means that I've got a really diverse practice. So as I say, probably the way that my practice works is I probably do 50% privately funded motoring type cases, and then 50% just general crime in the Crown Court. And that could be, absolutely everything. And I'm getting to the point now whereby I've built up quite a good practice. So I've got a good network of solicitors that actively request me. So, when you think about it, when I was first in chambers, you live on returns. So returns would be, cases from other barristers in chambers, or maybe work that's come in from other chambers. Whereas I'm now at the point whereby there are certain solicitors out there that really like what I do, and they're actually coming into chambers and requesting me. So I've got that good.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's nice as well. I feel like someone, like if I didn't know you, but I knew of you, i.e. your online presence, for me, it just makes sense that that type of person would prefer to be self-employed. That's almost like an entrepreneurial spirit. And from that perspective, I guess it makes sense. I'm going to ask you, like, it's been super interesting kind of touching on, I feel like I have to manage the time today, because I have to manage the time to try and touch on all the areas. And I'm conscious, like, I don't want to take you past 7:30 because I know you're very busy. So I know we've kind of been half an hour in. We've touched on your legal career. But I'd be interested as well to kind of go. It sounds like from the speed mooting side.
Yes.
I know people listening would be very interested to kind of hear about the inception of it. And also, I think I did forget to mention also the podcast host for Partners in Crime. Apologies. I should have thrown that straight in the beginning. And you do that with Haley. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I haven't had the chance to watch any episodes as of yet. I'm just trying to put out my job and my own stuff. But I do intend to watch some of the episodes because I've seen some of them pop up. They look extremely interesting. So I think what I'd be interested to kind of talk to you about is how did all of these things come to be? What is the link between all of these things? And is Advocacy Club separate from Speed Mooting? And so because I'm the uninitiated here. Treat me as the uninitiated. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, to keep it nice and simple, so Speed Mooting is our general brand name. So Speed Mooting is the umbrella that covers everything. So everything that we do is all under the one umbrella. Speed Mooting, we have the website speedmooting.com, so everything comes through there. So whichever event it is, whether it's the Advocacy Club, whether it's our podcast, whether it's the Northern Pupillage Fair, they're all Speed Mooting events. So think of that as our overall umbrella brand, as it were. So where this all came from, I set up the National Speed Mooting Competition 2012. So this was born out of when I was at university. I was never picked for external mooting competitions. In fact, I didn't really hear about many of them. And what I found was when I did eventually hear about them, I found they were quite cliquey. And so what would happen is you'd have certain people in the bar society, they're very cliquey, they pick the mates, or the lecturers would pick people that they knew, and they would go on to take part in these extracurricular intervarsity mooting competitions. So I thought, well, let's set up a competition whereby you take away all the politics and all the bureaucracy. So the idea, me and a friend who I did the bar course with, we set up this single day competition. And the idea was you have 128 people in a one-day knockout. It's speed mooting, so 7 minutes of submissions. You get the bundle the night before, which includes everything. So that's the pre-drafted skeleton arguments and all the case law that you can rely upon. So no research, no drafting, which makes it open to anyone, because the research and drafting can put a lot of people off. And we bring in barristers and solicitors to act as the judges. And so it's just a one-off. We were literally in the pub having a chat about this, and we got the idea together. The next day, we sent some emails around, got some sponsorship, and we put the first one together in about 6 weeks. And then a year later, we were contacted by a university who said, do you fancy doing this again? We want to host this. And we looked at each other and said, yeah, why not? Let's do it again. And then it just became a thing. It was a one-off competition every year, the National Speed Mooting Competition.
And where was this done initially?
So, well, the very, very first one was in a Mormon church, of all places. So we did have a venue sorted for it, and the venue pulled out last minute. And so this was about a week before the competition. And so I'm Catholic, my friend's Mormon, and he turned around and said to me, he said, oh, my church, you know, apart from the fact it's got a steeple, doesn't look like a church at all. There's loads of classrooms in there and everything. He said, this would be the perfect venue. I said, yeah, why not? Let's do that. So it was very makeshift. And the first ever one was literally held in a Mormon church. And then the second one, we went to Salford University in the Lady Hale building. And then pretty much every year we've moved around. So we've covered pretty much most of the universities in the Northwest. So we've done a few in Liverpool, a few in Manchester, and a few in the surrounding areas. And then when COVID hit, students were not going into university. There were limited opportunities for mooting and things like that. So I had this idea to start doing some online Q&A sessions, get some barristers in, get some solicitors in, and let's do some interactive sessions for, you know, people to come online and ask questions. And off the back of that, I got the idea, well, I wonder whether we could start doing competitions online as well, you know, give people things to do. So that's how we expanded from just doing mooting competitions into other forms of advocacy. So player mitigation, bail application competitions, etc. And then I got this idea, well, given how, you know, good the online software is and how many people we can run online, you know, in breakout rooms and the like, let's make an advocacy club. So the whole idea with the Advocacy Club is it's not a competition, it's a place to practice. So people come online, they practice in this low pressure environment in small groups of 3, 4, 5 people, share feedback, and then I will speak and give general feedback. And that just became massively popular. So that was 2021, we started that, and it's just continued to grow ever since. So yes,
that's between then. So it started out, it sounds as a one-off event, and then it's just become so popular, just snowballs essentially. It's come from
literally,
that to your Advocacy Club, and with the events itself, like, is it nice kind of seeing people go on their own advocacy journey? Like the first time someone presents to, let's say, 3, 4, 5 sessions in, just seeing how they're developing as an advocate.
It's incredible. So just to give you an example, there was a chap a couple of years ago, and I remember watching him do some mooting, and he had all the classic mistakes that you see with mooters: speaking too quickly, not citing the cases properly, he struggled a bit with judicial intervention, things like that. And literally about 6 months later, he made it to the semi-final of the national speed mooting competition. So it's incredible to see someone go from a very novice mooter all the way to a semi-finalist in such a short space of time.
And when you run the mooting competitions, how do they, like, let's say you go to I think you do the national final, right? Is that you do one where it's the national speed mooting competition? Is that done in rounds, or is it all done in
all done in a single day? So that's the whole idea. The whole selling point of it is from start to finish. When you get the papers to the final is 24 hours.
Got you. So it's, what time does it begin?
Begins at 9 o'clock. So we do registration from about 8:30.
Right.
We do our draw at 9. People are mooting by 9:30, and the final normally finishes about 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, and then it's just essentially one round. People are going up, and then they get to the final. It's nice.
So we go from 128 people to a winner in one day.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's crazy.
It's pandemonium organising that.
Yeah, no, I bet a lot of again, back to plates. I've got things that got to be spun.
Yeah.
With the Advocacy Club side, is that more like, in terms of this is a space where people can just go to soft practice, essentially?
Precisely. That's exactly what it is. So there's no competitive element to the Advocacy Club. It's all about, as you say, soft practice. And what you find is we've got a really broad range of members. So we've got people who've never done any advocacy before. We've even got practicing barristers and solicitors in the club that look to sharpen their skills. Mm-hmm. So what we do with that, it's all online. We give people the papers 7 days in advance, and it's the same philosophy: no research, no drafting, everything's included. And we cover such a broad range of law. So we do criminal submissions, so your plea and mitigation, your bail application, civil submissions advocacy. We're in the middle of doing trial advocacy at the moment. So our next session next week is all about witness handling. We're doing closing speech the week after. We do speed mooting, public speaking, debating. And, what happens is people go into a breakout room for an hour. They'll perform one by one. They'll all perform that piece of advocacy. And then they share feedback amongst themselves, peer-to-peer feedback. So, you haven't got the pressure of thinking, oh, I'm in front of a barrister or I'm in front of a lecturer. You're just in front of other like-minded people, and that really takes the pressure off.
And it's nice as well. I feel like that's always the best place to learn. It's like if you're learning to drive, you're not trying to drive at the speed limit in that sense, because the faster you go, the more likely there is for error, and there's more more issues that come. And I feel like it's the same way with advocacy, in the sense that when you're learning, you don't want to be in a place where you feel like you can cause damage.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I say every single session. I always say, this is the place to come and make your mistakes. So even if you go completely off piste, even if you make so many mistakes and you trip up, it doesn't matter, because, there's no pressure. It's not for anything. It's not worth anything. It's just about making mistakes here, learn from them, so that when you go into the real world, whether it's a moot, whether it's you're in court, you're doing a presentation, you've learned from them in the Advocacy Club. You've made the mistakes there so that you're ready for the real world.
How did you then go from that to Partners in Crime? It's under the speed mooting umbrella.
Yeah, all parts of speed mooting as well. Yeah.
How did that begin?
So that's an interesting one. So I a couple of years ago, I did a couple of the odd podcast episodes, just inviting guests on. And Hayley, who runs Speed Mooting with me, so she's my fiance, due to be my wife in about 2 months' time. And so she was in private practice as a commercial solicitor, and she left private practice and joined Speed Mooting full time in April last year. And what we said was, when she joined, we said, let's start doing a weekly podcast, because we just thought it'd be interesting for people to hear from, Hayley as a solicitor, myself as a barrister. And so we said, yeah, let's just start recording some podcast episodes. So we literally sit at the kitchen table, laptops either side of it, chatting about it, and it comes out every single week. And today we've literally just recorded episode 69.
Okay, wow. So
so we've been going well over a year now.
I was going to say, so every week you do an episode, and what do the topics tend to be on?
Well, so what we do is we if there's anything topical that's happened that week in the law, we'll have a chat about that. We talk about we have a learning the law segment, so it's where we'll talk about something practical. So, for example, I've spoken about how a sentencing hearing works, how a first appearance works, talk about different concepts in criminal law. Likewise, Hayley talks about different concepts in civil law and procedural aspects, etc. We have a thing called Ask Speed Squad, where people send in questions. Normally they're centered around applications and interviews, sometimes advocacy, sometimes specific questions on legal practice. And just we have other general chit chat about anything linked to the law that might be topical as well. So it's surprising, but we managed to fill nearly an hour every single week.
Always got things to talk about. Lawyers love to natter.
The wedding comes up as well occasionally.
Yeah. So that's in 2 months' time.
Yeah.
I bet you're excited for that.
Yeah, we're both pumped for that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I hope it's a special event as well.
Thank you.
What I wanted to I'm conscious we've got 20 minutes left. So what I wanted to kind of pivot into is, you've got all these things, all these different organizations, and they all require, I'd imagine, X amount of time. Hayley works on it full time. For you, what does the future look like for you in terms of not only your organizations, but like your role as a barrister? Do you have aspirations one day to walk down the King's Counsel path? Do you have aspirations to go down the judging routes? And for the businesses as well, where do you want to see them going?
Yeah, good question. In terms of personally, at present, I don't see myself taking up a judicial role, just because I prefer being on this side of the bench. I prefer presenting submissions and arguing cases. Whether that changes in years to come, I don't know. But for the time being, I just don't see myself in that position. But as they say never. I want to continue in this role and continue to take on bigger and better cases. Whether that means I take on, I become a silk, who's to know? Because there are plenty of people out there with very good practices doing very high profile cases without being a silk. So I think what I'll do is I'll see when we get to that point, when we cross that bridge. I'm not quite there yet, but when we get there, we'll see what happens. In terms of Speed Mooting itself, I see that continuing to grow. We're continuing to add new events all the time. So, for example, the Northern Pupillage Fair, that was our inaugural event last year. We're on to our second one now. We're, over 2 months away from the event. We've already got double the number of exhibitors that we had last year.
Amazing.
So, that's just continuing to grow and expand. We're hoping to expand the Advocacy Club as well. So that's going to continue to grow. We're continuing to add new sessions there. And the funny thing with it is you just never know where it's going to go. So obviously, Advocacy Club was really the second part of Speed Mooting, as it were, that we set up. And I would have never thought 5 years later that there will also be a pupillage fair, a podcast, all these other. So quite honestly, who knows where we go? And, having Hayley on board is brilliant because she's very creative. She comes up with lots of good ideas. So, for example, in January, we did a speed mentoring evening. So that was where we had a number of barristers on an online chat, and people, attendees got to come on and they got one-on-one mentoring sessions with a barrister. 15 minutes at a time, the speed mentoring element. But that was one of Hayley's ideas. So it's just crazy. We just never know which idea is going to come to us next.
You got two legal brains in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't actually touched on the national. We've touched on it briefly on the National Pupillage Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been to the Pupillage Fair down south?
Yeah, so funnily enough, so the Target Jobs National Pupillage Fair, we exhibited there last year.
Right, got you.
It was quite fun actually, because so the way it works, it's at Lincoln's Inn, and you've got sort of a main hall where many of the main exhibitors are, and then there was a specific room where the Council of the Inns of Courts were there, the Bar Council, and ourselves. And so from Speed Mooting, we had myself and Hayley and my mum and dad come down to help as well. And my dad is brilliant. So just before the event starts, he's out there with all of the Speed Mooting tote bags saying, come on, come on. So literally as soon as the day comes in, people were flooding into the room, coming and chatting with us. So we had a really good day speaking there. And I actually delivered an advocacy workshop at the National Pupillage Fair last year, which is I think it's on the Target Jobs YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So that went down well. And we're doing the same at the Pupillage Fair this year.
Okay, amazing. Like it's interesting as well hearing as well, because when you're running the northern one, having been to the south, it kind of gives you insight into what's done really well down south and like how you can bring that value to people up north. What was the reception the first time that you ran the event?
Oh, it was incredible. So we had over 900 people signed up for our first event.
Yeah,
over 900 people registered for it. And I remember sort of the doors opened at 10 o'clock for our one. So, you know, we've got a little bit of a buzz, you know, the calm before the storm at 10 to 10 and think, oh, there are many people here. We opened the door and people just flooded in, and it was crazy to see. And it's mad to think, you know, all the months of preparation you've had, and then you see all these people there, you know, having chatting to the different exhibitors. So it was great to see. And, you know, it's something I've been really passionate about. And I've had this idea for a couple of years, and it was only last year that we said, you know what, let's finally execute this and let's finally do it. Because when I was, so the first time I went to a national pupillage fair would have been either my first or second year when I was a paralegal. Didn't make much money as a paralegal. So you're using a big chunk of your disposable income to get a train ticket all the way down to London, and you've got all the other expenses of eating while you're in London and whatever else that goes with it. And the other thing as well is, you know, it was 50 quid for a train ticket back then. Now I can imagine a train ticket from Liverpool to London is probably triple digits, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extortionate. Yeah, it's definitely not 50 quid.
50 quid anymore. So we thought, you know what, let's bring something up north, so that people all over the country have got a fair they can attend.
And is that like in terms of liaising with chambers? Is it liaising with chambers in the north or across the country to be
all over?
Literally
all over. So we've got we've got chambers. So there's a number of Liverpool chambers exhibiting. We've got a few from circuits in the Midlands, at the Midland circuit. Got a number of London chambers that are coming up. We've also got other organisations such as you know, law firms, law schools, etc. And as of today, you know, so this is hot off the press, the 4 Inns of Court have just confirmed they're all attending our fair as well.
That is huge. Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. Like that is such nice growth for such an event that's adding such amazing value to people up the north as well. I think, you know, as a fellow northerner, you know, it's I think I speak for us all when I say, you know, we're grateful to have that event in the north. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect that's going on between aspiring barristers and them feeling like, well, if I'm pursuing a career at the bar, yes, there are pupillage in the regions. No one ever said that there isn't, but it's like the focus has always been predominantly down south. So it's nice for some of that focus to shift and people to kind of be in a place where they don't, like you said with the trains, there's almost prohibitive. You think you're going to spend X amount of hundreds of pounds to go down for, even if you want to, it's just a lot. It's it's a lot more difficult.
And I think also it's just nice for, you know, particularly people at the earlier stages, so before they're even on the bar course, to meet chambers, find out what chambers are looking for. Having the Inns of Court there is going to be helpful as well, because, You know, when I was at university, I didn't know, for example, you could apply for a scholarship. So by the time I found out that, you know, I had to apply for membership at the inn, the scholarships had already closed and missed that boat. So you don't know what you don't know. So people are going there when they're in first year. We even have A-level students that attend as well. They can meet all these different organisations, find out the different stages in the process of getting to the bar, and really start prepping themselves as early as possible.
Yeah, I think that's super important as well for people like listening who are interested in the career at the bar. Is sometimes one of the biggest preventative things is the money, and there is money out there. There are sources of scholarships and funds, and you know, you want someone who has an interest to have all the information. So it's definitely worthwhile listening, and I will definitely be attending if not this year, definitely next year. I'm looking even just to come and see it in person, and see how kind of where it's come from, and it'll be 3 years old next year.
It certainly will, yeah.
We'll have
Scary to think, actually.
I'll celebrate his birthday.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave like the last 10 minutes really just to ask you a bit about, in terms of like looking back to where you've got to today. Can you talk a little bit about, and I'm trying to as well be conscious not to like spin it through an interview lens, because I'm really enjoying the conversation with you. I think I'm just trying to as well to touch on areas where some people are, I think what they can benefit from learning about your journey is that, similar to me in a way, is that you're not just the traditional barrister. You've actually gone and upskilled yourself outside of law to be able to do the things that you do, whether it's you've been highly effective at securing sponsors for your organizations, whether it's the tech skills that you need to be able to set a website up or conduct the meeting. So I think it'd be interesting for people listening who want to walk in your footsteps to learn, like, how did you go about upskilling yourself from what sounds like a very busy journey. Was that something you focused intentionally on? Was that something you put time aside to say, I need to learn this to do this? Or was it a case of it just came naturally as you wanted to do things? You said, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I think it was a case of learning on the go. So, and failing a lot as well. You know, I think that's, you know, you'll know exactly the same thing with all of your ventures and everything that you run. Nothing ever goes to plan first time round, and you'll have lots of failed ventures before something actually becomes quite successful. So, you know, there's been lots of failures along the way that I've learned from. But in terms of the upskilling, it's been sort of learning what I need to know as I go. So taking the example of, you know, the website. So the second year of the National Speed Moot, I thought, well, let's set a website up. Didn't really have any massive skills in how to build a website. So did some research at the time. I built it all in WordPress. You know, use certain plugins, but, you know, there's elements of coding involved. So kind of learned as I went along. So that was an example.
And you're doing that in the evening. So you're coming back from your day job, and then your evenings, you're kind of learning this part of coding, and then searching for where to do the website, and all this time essentially. So it's interesting to hear it, because similarly, I can resonate with it a lot, and I think people listening, it's actually, and this is what I said when I went on the podcast with LexisNexis a couple of weeks ago, is that our generation coming through now, people don't just want to be one thing anymore. And there's not that there's anything wrong with just doing one thing, but building skills that give you independence from your profession. And even if you love your profession and you want to continue doing it, I think it's super valuable. But I think people don't really hear that much from the legal side, that lawyers are going home and spending time trying to learn other skills, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important actually as well, you know, particularly if you've, you know, built skills whilst at university, or whilst you know, before you've fully qualified, talk about them on your CV, talk about them in application forms, because it's always important for, you know, chambers and firms to hear about that, because there might be ways that you can help out. So certainly, you know, from a personal point of view, we've learned how to put social media posts together quite well. And that's obviously helpful for my chambers, because we feed that back and say, oh, what should we do these posts? So myself and Hayley help Chambers a little bit with their social media side of things, their skills that we've picked up over time, and we feed back. The go-to man. So it's important. Certainly, if you've got a skill in terms of event planning, which I think that's one of the skills that I've certainly built up over the years. That's also something that Chambers and firms will be happy with, because you can put on internal events. Certainly, when Hayley was a solicitor in private practice, she was often involved in running charity events and things like that. So a lot of these skills that you think have no relevance whatsoever to the law actually are valuable to the firms and the chambers that will be taking you on.
100%. And I think it's nice to hear, in the sense that I think people, even if they have the skills, are quite apprehensive to talk about them, because they think, oh, the chambers or the firm are thinking I'm developing skills to leave. So they don't want to include it for that reason, when actually not everyone who has the skills wants to walk away. And everyone's circumstances is differently, and you'd like to think that firms and chambers see the value in the skills, and because you're a professional at the end of the day, you should be entrusted to behave in a way which is in keeping with
precisely
organization.
And then I think also in terms of networking, liaising, trying to get sponsorships, that's something that's just developed over time. There's been lots of times where we've reached out to people, heard nothing back, and it's probably because in the earlier days, you're just having a go. There's no, well, there might be training out there, but we certainly didn't have it. So it's something that over time you develop that through failures, and then you improve and you learn how to speak to people. You learn how to draft well-drafted letters, effective emails, etc. So they're all just skills that I've as I've gone along, I've built these skills sort of as and when I've needed to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sometimes that's an efficient way to do it as well. Sometimes you can sit down to learn everything you could watch a digital marketing course for ages, and then it's 20 hours long, and then it all just goes out of your brain and you're only actually using one chapter of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think with a lot of things, it makes sense when you're learning it for a specific reason. I suppose it's like, if you compare it to when you're on the bar course and you learn your criminal procedure rules, a lot of them kind of won't make sense in a bit of a vacuum. But once you're in practice and you're learning these same things, oh, right, I can see how this applies to this case. I should say, Taz, if we run over past 7:30, don't panic.
Okay, well, I know you've got a lot on, so I do my best always to try and stick with time. Could I ask, in terms of if you were to put it down to your success to date, what would you put that down to, like skills wise?
Yeah,
is it a hard skill or is it a soft skill?
Oh, I think it's a little bit of both. I think my success is definitely through perseverance and not taking no for an answer. Because I certainly struggled to get pupillage. Whether I ever would have gotten a pupillage or been offered a pupillage, I don't know. It's difficult to say. But by me going, well, do you know what? I'm going to upskill, become a solicitor, cut my teeth in a criminal defense firm, build up my advocacy skills that way, go to the CPS, build up my skills, build up my experience there. So when it came to me applying for a pupillage exemption and a tenancy for chambers, I can say, look, I'm basically doing the job that you need me to do anyway. So, obviously, if you go through the pupillage route, you're a blank canvas, you're training up that way. Here, I've gone through, got all the experience, got all the skills that I needed and gone in. I think with me as well, to get the skills that I've needed, I think there's elements of, the hard skills themselves. So I'd like to think I'm a good advocate. I'd like to think, I'm good enough at drafting and everything else that goes with being a barrister. But I think it's through practice and experience that I've built those up. I'm certainly not a natural advocate. It's through years and years of developing my public speaking. Some people have just got the gift of the gab. I think I've built it up, that way. And then there's also the soft skills as well. And I think that I know how to speak to people, regardless of, what background you come from. I can deal with all manners of people from all walks of life.
Is that
life-wise?
Is that
I think it's got to be, hasn't it? And I think for that reason, that's why clients quite like me. And the number of times that, I'll meet with clients on a, first appearance, CMH, and they go, oh, I quite like you. I want you for the trial. And I think that that's really important, you know, giving people that level of client care. And then likewise, you know, giving a good service to solicitors as well. And I think that that's a soft skill that's missed on many people, you know, so you need those really good soft skills to be successful at the bar.
Definitely. I definitely think it's a mix. And I think in the end, you have to care about what you're doing as well, because normally care is the biggest driver for you actually wanting to upskill or whatever it is, whether you can learn the advocacy if you're not a natural. I think people listening are probably reassured that the founder of Speed Mooting, it says by his own admission, it's a learned skill. It's not, he's not a born advocate in that sense. And not everyone is. Very few people are. I say they're the absolute minority. And 9 times out of 10, what I've found is that those who are quote unquote born advocates have just had more exposure from a younger age, whether it's come through the home or through the worlds that they've been in. They've seen it. Whereas I think I can speak to coming from a world with no advocacy. The first time I was doing a piece of advocacy, it was like buttermouth, feathers, just nerves. It's just a new world. It's like anything that's new. If you never forget the first time you go out in a car and the clammy feel, especially when you join the motorway for the first time. I think that's a human thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can certainly remember my first moot, and it was, you know, keeping up with the analogy, a bit of a car crash. But you know, over time I developed it. And, you know, coming back to your point about upskilling, when I finished the bar course, you know, and you're in that paralegal role, I realized that I wanted to continue to develop my advocacy, because, you know, you do, I don't know, 15, 20 pieces of advocacy on the bar course, and then that's it. And then whilst you're applying for pupillage, you're not doing any advocacy at all. Yeah. So I joined a thing called Liverpool Speakers Club. It's nothing to do with the law, it's just a public speaking club. Yeah. But it meant that every month I got the chance to do public speaking, and I was receiving feedback from experienced members. And so I was going out in my own time to develop that skill.
Got you.
Started to enter national public speaking competitions. I was winning awards. So, you know, that was something that I spent my own time doing. And I think that I learned so much there. Yeah. At Liverpool Speakers Club. And I think that's part of the reason that I've become, you know, a good advocate.
You do stay in touch with them, don't you? You run, I think you do some events together. So
I'm the president.
You put the ladder back.
Yeah, no, I'm still a member to this day, and I'm the president of Liverpool Speakers Club.
Right. Okay. Wow. So it's a full circle moment for you.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. One final question from me is, when you're doing the role in chambers to just all the hats that you're wearing, how do you walk the social media tightrope if you want to, let's say, go and do a post or whatever it is, for someone looking in who wants to get involved in social media and beginning to grow, let's say, their own personal brand without putting their future career at risk? Because every employer is different. Is this something, because I've been asked this recently, and it's interesting to ask everyone individually, because you don't know what someone's answer is going to be, is when were you intentional and conscious coming into the social media space about what you were writing, and you checking things, or was your filtration system quite laissez-faire? It was, I'm just going to do a post, and you weren't even thinking about any of that stuff?
Interesting. I've honestly never thought about this so much. I think the reality is the bulk of my social media posts, so for example, me personally, tend to be about speed mooting anyway. So I'm not really posting that much about the law, not really posting that much in terms of my opinion. And in actual fact, if you scroll through my social media, you'll probably never really see me putting any opinions online. And you know, I suppose for that reason,
design.
I think so. Yeah, I think for me, I was a bit slow coming onto social media anyway. So I was like 23 when I joined social media on a personal level, and I think I got Twitter first. Never really took to Facebook, got Instagram and the like, but I don't really do that many personal posts anyway, because part of my thing is, if I've got something to say, I'll say it in conversation with people, you know. You know, so I'm not really
you're a true lawyer, you don't leave evidence behind.
Yeah, well, exactly. Exactly. So I think you know, I think that, you know, for those who do share things on social media and, you know, you're giving opinions and the like, I think just be careful and just think about, you know, how it's going to be interpreted. Remember, it's there for life, and remember that people are going to be, you know, in years to come, people are going to be looking at it. And so just think about, you know, if you're in an employed role, what would your bosses think about what you're putting out online? If you're going to go into the self-employed space, run your own business, just think about what impact that's going to have on your reputation going forwards. And it might be that, you know, you're very passionate about something, you want to share your opinion on it, and, you know, quite frankly, you don't care what that might be, and that might be your opinion. And this is me sharing some advice off the cuff, because, as I say, I don't share a great deal of personal things online anyway. Not for fear of backlash or anything like that, just simply because I don't really tend to. So as I say, most of my social media content tends to be sharing stuff from Speed Mooting, you know, what we're doing, sharing the word about that, or sharing professional achievements, you know, good results in cases, awards that I've won, whatever it might be. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but that's my 2 cents for what it's worth anyway.
And the last thread, I keep saying the last one, the last thread I thought would be interesting for people to hear as well, which is unique about your journey, is that you've gone into the public space with your now fiancée, future wife. Mm-hmm. So for someone listening in who's also thinking about, maybe they're in a relationship, maybe they want to do something with their other half, like, what's that been like? And like, for you to have someone in the trenches with you who's also your romantic other half, to kind of push what you're involved in instead, outside of your career, and in terms of how helpful has that been for you to kind of on the journey to have her there?
Well, massively. So, you know, obviously we're very supportive of each other, and, you know, it's helpful because, you know, we're always there, always coming up with new ideas. You know, we'll go out for dinner, we'll be chatting about, you know, oh, what about this idea, what about that? You know, we're just you know, we're very passionate about speed mooting. So I think that, you know, because we're talking a lot quite regularly, we're always thinking about new ideas. I think, you know, putting ourselves into the public sphere, thankfully, you know, we're not you know, super celebrities or anything like that, so not being stopped left, right and center. But it's always nice whenever we go to, you know, legal social events, whatever it might be, and someone comes over and goes, oh, we watched your video last week, we love what you said about. So it's always nice to hear things like that. It makes you feel like, I suppose, a mini celebrity in a way. But yeah, no, I think, you know, going into this venture together, and, you know, particularly with Hayley, it's been the best thing for Speed Mooting, the best thing for us. So I'd say, you know, go full steam ahead if that's what you're thinking of going into, you know, any form of business with your husband, wife, etc.
Well, I'm gonna end it on that note. When 5 minutes over, I hope you don't mind.
No.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Long overdue. I've been really looking forward to today, and it's been a really insightful chat. So yeah, I'd just like to thank you for giving up your time as well.
No, my pleasure. We will definitely need to do this again.
For sure, 100%.